When this guy comes to his senses, he has no idea where he is, but then it hits him. He's in the middle of a slave arena. His opponent is a burly maniac named Butcher, and the entire arena is absolutely thrilled by this bloodthirsty gladiator. Without wasting a moment, Butcher looms over our guy with his giant hammer and strikes with all his might. The whole arena roars in excitement, convinced it's already over, but when the dust settles, Butcher can't believe his eyes. Our MC is standing right on top of his hammer, safe and sound, and he's already imbuing his sword with magic. Before Butcher can react, he leaps forward with lightning speed and ends it all with a single blow. Butcher's lifeless body drops behind him. Now the entire arena is cheering our guy's name, except for the rich spectators who just lost a fortune betting on his defeat. So who is this guy, and how did such a skilled swordsman end up in a slave arena? After the ruthless demons corner the humans into their final stronghold in Ale City, they wipe out every last one of them. Colin Hall stands as the final human alive, and even he is pushed to his absolute limit after everything he has gone through. He has fought against these demons as the strongest swordsman this world has ever seen, yet even that strength is no longer enough to turn the tide. The demon standing right in front of him mocks him for still trying to fight despite being the only one left alive. At the same time, it does acknowledge his efforts in its own twisted way, and decides to reward him by giving him the liberty to choose how he wants to die. As the exhausted human watches all his struggles fall apart, his mind drifts back to how this entire nightmare first began. It has been a year since the demons suddenly stepped onto this world without any warning at all. Since humans were weak compared to them, the demons had no trouble invading one city after another with ease, and made their way into the capital. The soldiers did everything they possibly could to resist, but these magicless commoners stood no chance against monsters who could freely use magic. Magic does exist in this world, but the real problem has always been that it is reserved only for the nobility. These nobles always believed themselves to be the heroes meant to save humanity, yet their poorly trained and weak magic could not even compete with the lower-ranked demons. Colin recalls the forbidden magic book he obtained, a book that allowed anyone to use magic regardless of status. However, he regrets getting his hands on it so late, knowing that things might have been completely different if he had it earlier. As the story shifts back to the present, the demon asks him once again if he has decided how he wishes to die. It casually throws out suggestions like chopping off his limbs or burning him alive until nothing remains. Colin, however, refuses to bend even in this hopeless situation and bluntly tells the demon to shut up. He then rushes at the demon for a final desperate stand, but the demon easily blocks his attack as if it means nothing. Colin quickly regains his footing and shifts his aim toward the demon's chest, targeting the heart with precision. However, the demon pulls back just in time and mocks him, saying that mere swordsmanship stands no chance against him. But just as the demon is about to continue his taunts, he suddenly realizes that Colin has somehow managed to land a hit and injure his body. Colin admits that ordinary swordsmanship would indeed be useless in a fight like this. It becomes clear that his blade is no ordinary weapon, but a forbidden one that consumes the wielder's life force as the price for its power. After revealing this, the boy charges at the demon once again and dives straight back into combat. He manages to keep up with the monster, trading blows as an equal while continuing the clash without backing down. The fight drags on until he finally spots the opening he has been waiting for, and in a single swift motion, he cuts off the demon's hand. That moment instantly enrages the monster. Fueled by anger, the demon mocks the so-called forbidden blade and catches it barehanded without hesitation. He tells the boy that things might have turned out differently if he had used that technique earlier as a surprise attack, then calls him unlucky for wasting his only chance while crushing the blade completely. Without giving him any room to recover, the demon follows up with a fire spell that blasts the swordsman away. Colin slams into the ground and grits his teeth in pain as he realizes that even this was not enough to bring the demon down. The demon quickly closes the distance again and grabs him by the collar, lifting him up with ease. He mocks the loser for only managing to take one arm while losing everything he had in return. At the edge of death, Colin apologizes to his comrades for failing to keep his promise. Just as the demon strikes him again and leaves his body drenched in blood, the dripping blood soaks into the forbidden book, and something within it finally activates. The MC finds himself alive once again, and he looks around in confusion while asking where he is. Just then he hears a strange voice and quickly turns toward it to check what it is. There he finds the forbidden magic book, now speaking directly to him. It tells the MC that his blood has awakened it, and as a favor, it will send him back through regression and give him a chance to redo everything. The MC tightens his fist the moment he hears about regression, as it is something he had always wished for deep down. He calls it the opportunity of a lifetime and accepts the offer without hesitation. The book seems pleased and tells the MC that it will stay by his side and help him master the art of magic, so he can achieve his goal of driving the demons back to where they came from. At that moment, countless pages burst out from the book and begin circling around him as a mysterious figure appears right in front of him. The book then shuts itself, and the unknown figure is seen holding it as the process of regression completes. The scene shifts to an arena where the crowd is loudly cheering for someone called Butcher. The MC looks around, clearly confused about why he is holding a sword and a shield. As he tries to make sense of what he is doing in a slave arena, it suddenly hits him that he has truly gone back into the past. From the roar of the crowd, it becomes clear that our MC has just taken a hit from the well-known butcher and somehow survived the blow. The owner of this slave arena, Viscount Thrace, twirls his mustache while looking down on these commoners, treating them as nothing more than tools to make him profit. To him, the purpose of these people is nothing more than entertaining the rich, and he treats them as pawns with no real value. As the fight intensifies, the crowd keeps cheering for the butcher, while the Viscount watches with excitement, convinced that everything is unfolding exactly as he planned, and that Colin was just an easy bait for the show. However, instead of getting crushed like it was supposed to happen, our MC cleanly dodges the attack and ends up standing with one foot placed firmly over the big guy's weapon. Around this point in time, Colin had no choice but to fight as a slave gladiator, forced into the arena without any escape. But now something feels different, and the boy realizes that he can actually use magic. He starts wondering if the magic book has merged with his body, and with that thought, he fights back, taking his first real step toward changing his fate. With just a few clean and simple moves, Colin rushes forward and slices through, severing the butcher's head from his massive body in a single decisive strike. He sets his mind on mastering the magic of the book, knowing that this time he wants to save humanity from being wiped out by the demons. As he glances toward the people who arranged this entire slave fight, he quickly understands that in his current position, even thinking about changing the future sounds like a joke. Realizing this, he decides to move step by step, and the first thing he needs to do is enter the Hall family just like in his previous life, and become Colin Hall once again. Our MC then recalls how in his past life, he was threatened and forced to deliberately lose this very fight. It turns out that the commoners had placed their bets on him, believing that he could defeat the nobles' champion known as the Butcher, but Viscount Thrace had planned to use Colin as a sacrificial piece just to entertain the nobles sitting above. Our MC, on the other hand, plans to use this moment as an opportunity to get noticed by the Lord of the Line territory, Marquis Darius Hall, and secure his way into the family much faster. With that in mind, he openly mocks the management for being useless, and boldly calls for them to send the next opponent at him. Meanwhile, Viscount Thrace is getting heavily scolded by the nobles after the Butcher's defeat, since he had convinced them to place large bets on the now-dead fighter. The Viscount struggles to keep his composure while trying to spin the situation as if everything is still going according to his plan, hoping to calm the furious nobles. On the other side, Marquis Darius shows clear interest in Colin and asks his butler, Cornell, to give his opinion on the final strike. Cornell admits that the slash was exceptionally powerful and, based on his experience, it clearly surpassed the level expected from an Imperial soldier. The Marquis appears intrigued, especially by the fact that the boy had the nerve to defy the Viscount's orders without hesitation. Back with the Viscount, he is still struggling to handle the angry nobles, and keeps trying to convince them that the boy will be torn apart in the next round. However, his weak excuses and forced confidence completely fall apart when Colin takes down the next opponent before the man can even properly step into the arena. The nobles erupt in anger after realizing they have been misled, and the Viscount, now desperate, resorts to force by ordering all the gladiators to be released at once against the boy like wild beasts. Both Cornell and Marquis Darius watch with growing interest, clearly eager to see how the boy handles this situation. As more than 6 gladiators charge toward him, Colin recalls how the Marquis once dreamed of a world where anyone could freely use magic. In his previous life, he failed to fulfill that vision entrusted to him, but this time, he firmly promises himself that he will make it a reality no matter what. The boy understands that simply defeating a few gladiators will not be enough to earn him a place in the Marquis family, so he loudly calls out to them and tells them to come at him all at once. The gladiators immediately move in from every direction, trying to surround him completely, but Colin avoids every single attack with precise movements, and then leaps into the air while preparing his blade for a counter. As he lands, he instantly cuts down 3 of his opponents by slicing through their necks in one clean motion, then turns their own weapons against the others and takes down 2 more without slowing his pace. He then focuses on the final gladiator still standing and smoothly throws his blade forward. The sword pierces straight through the man and continues flying into the crowd, grazing past the side of the Viscount's hair before embedding itself into the wall right behind him. Thrace breaks into a cold sweat after barely surviving the strike, and the humiliation hits him hard as his expression twists with anger. He silently swears that he will make the boy pay for what just happened. Seeing the entire display, the Marquis openly mocks the Viscount for getting outplayed in his own setup. The rest of the nobles immediately take the Viscount's side and argue with Darius Hall, insisting that lowly slaves like this should never be allowed to act freely. Some of them even go as far as demanding Colin's execution, which makes the Marquis's expression turn serious. The atmosphere grows tense as he sharply scolds them for still looking down on the lower class. This reaction only angers the Viscount further, and he openly challenges the Marquis by calling his ideals misguided. He reminds him that magic was granted to humans by God 1,000 years ago, and that event established the hierarchy where nobles came to be known as God's chosen agents. He then raises his staff, directing his magic toward the Marquis, and questions whether he truly intends to go against that very order. Hearing this, Colin steps in and turns the heated debate into something far more intense. He calmly blinks and takes a seat among the nobles as if he belongs there, which immediately sends panic through the crowd. While everyone starts shouting and calling for the divine guards, Colin directly challenges Thrace and points his sword at him, asking him to prove whether he truly believes he is some kind of agent of God. The challenge is accepted, and both sides move into the arena. All the nobles remain confident that the Viscount will easily crush the so-called insect in front of him. They watch with satisfied smiles, while Darius appears noticeably more tense. Viscount Thrace makes the first move, continuing his trash talk as he casts a wind magic spell. At that moment, as the spell begins forming, Colin hears the voice of the magic book inside his mind, and a system panel appears in front of his eyes, showing Thrace's stats. From what he sees, the Viscount is nothing more than a beginner-level mage with more arrogance than actual strength. Thrace unleashes his technique, Wind Edge, a spell meant to cut through everything in its path. The nobles start laughing and placing bets on how many pieces Colin's body will be split into. Some guess 7 pieces, others say 8. The Viscount proudly tells the Marquis to watch closely as he demonstrates the clear difference between a noble and a slave. Colin, however, remains calm, his body unaffected due to his resistance to magic. Unfortunately for the Viscount, the only thing his powerful wind slashes manage to destroy is Colin's shirt. The attack passes harmlessly as Colin walks straight through it and closes the distance toward Thrace, leaving the spectators completely stunned. The Viscount quickly tries to draw his blade, but before he can fully unsheath it, Colin strikes and knocks it out of his hand, sending it flying away. He then places his own sword at the noble's throat, effectively ending the fight. At that moment, the magic system activates again and informs the MC that a new type of magic has been detected. Shadow hands emerge from the ground and wrap tightly around the boy, binding him in place. The magic is cast by the divine guards who have arrived after receiving a report that a slave has insulted the nobility. Their presence alone is overwhelming, and they immediately declare that they are here to detain the suspect. After seeing the divine guards, Colin realizes he is in serious trouble. These guards belong to the Magic Tower organization, a force known for enforcing bloodline supremacy and reinforcing strict noble dominance over the weak. The MC understands that these guards are elite nobles themselves, and their strength far surpasses that of ordinary royalty. He studies the binding magic quickly and realizes he could break through it with ease, but decides not to act immediately to avoid drawing attention. Instead, he pretends that he cannot escape the restraint. At that moment, he takes a bold gamble and loudly declares that he is the son of Marquis Darius Hall, ordering them to release the magic immediately. Hearing this, both the divine guards and the Viscount are visibly confused. People around begin whispering, saying they have never heard of the Marquis having another son. Colin, however, remains focused, hoping his gamble will work. He knows that divine guards do not normally lay a hand on true nobility, and he is betting everything on that rule. Thrace finds it unacceptable that someone would soil the name of nobility and use it so cheaply just to save his own life. As punishment, he is determined to deliver justice with his sword on the spot. Just then, a powerful voice echoes throughout the entire arena. It belongs to Lord Darius, whose mere presence makes everyone freeze where they stand. The Viscount quickly assures the graceful lord that he was merely ending the miserable existence of a sinner. Out of nowhere, the Marquis slaps Colin hard across the face. He declares it disgusting that a mere slave would stain his noble family name. Even the divine guards are stunned by what just happened. For a second, they truly thought he came to offer help. Thrace looks like a fool, unable to understand what is happening before him. The Marquis then grabs our boy into a tight chokehold, stating that some hard labor in the merchant guild should knock him back to his senses. Our protagonist remains silent as the thick, gloved hands of the Marquis tighten around his neck. Marquis Darius is outraged that he first insulted Thrace, and then even dared to raise a sword against the noble. However, Colin stays calm the entire time. Everything is going smoothly, just like he planned. After putting on that performance, the Marquis formally apologizes to Viscount Thrace for his son's improper behavior. Thrace's shrunken brain struggles to process since when exactly they became father and son. Colin shyly comments that he cannot be blamed since the Viscount insulted his father first. Daddy Darius immediately orders his son to remain silent. He then promises the divine guards that he will personally discipline his boy. He dismisses them, making it clear their presence is no longer required. However, the Viscount has no intention of backing down. He refuses to let even a Marquis use such an obvious joke to steal away his #1 slave. With bloodshot eyes and clear murderous intent, he declares that Colin will be put down by his own hands right now. He even points his sword directly at the lord of the territory to prove he is absolutely serious. Our boy laughs when he sees the fool checkmate himself. Thrace has just raised his weapon against the lord of Line territory himself. By that logic, he has openly defied the decision made by both the lord and the entire divine guard. Colin lets the sack of bones know he just committed high treason in front of his whole audience. His sharp words catch Thrace's tongue, leaving the old man speechless in the center of the arena. Destroyed in front of his crowd, the noble trembles in fear. He denies the accusation, but the Divine Guard captain has made his decision. The captain concludes it was all just a big misunderstanding and orders Colin's restraints to be removed. He even offers a formal apology for causing a scene. Next, he turns to Thrace and informs him that he will personally submit a full report of everything that happened to the magic tower. Thrace falls to his knees in horror at what awaits him next. His fate will now be decided by the council. Our hero finally lets out a slow breath of relief. Meanwhile, the captain of the Divine Guard is no fool. He quietly tells his men that this Colin is a suspicious figure, and they must lead a thorough investigation on his background. One innocent subordinate asks why they would investigate Lord Darius's son. The captain replies firmly that it is impossible for no one to recognize the son of the Marquis of Lean Territory. Visibly irritated by the obviously fake claim, he is determined to prove that the boy is not the Marquis's son. On the other hand, his subordinates find it strange that Colin did not curb under pressure, even when he was restrained. They suspect he must share some special connection with the Marquis, who arrived so quickly to protect him. Although the captain cannot explain every detail yet, he orders his men to keep a close watch on the suspect. The scene then shifts to a carriage traveling through a lush forest. Inside, the Marquis laughs heartily at the brilliant performance Colin delivered in the heat of the moment. After a brief silence, Colin expresses his sincere gratitude to the Marquis for saving his life. Shortly after the duel, the Lord had sent his butler Cornell to purchase Colin immediately before anyone else could step in. The Marquis then shows genuine interest in his abilities, asking whether he has experience fighting on the front lines. His sharp eyes had already judged that Colin's movements were far from ordinary. The smooth precision of his actions suggested either years of battlefield experience or training under a skilled warrior. Our hero lowers his gaze and drifts into old memories. He shares that after his parents died, his own village sold him into slavery when he was still very young. Years later, a kind noble purchased him and taught him basic magic. That same man also trained him to survive in real combat. Strong emotions show in his eyes as he says that the noble gentleman was no different from a father to him. After the noble's passing, the man had entrusted him with the dream he was never able to achieve himself. Colin's eyes glow with determination as he declares that he will do whatever it takes to fulfill that dream. He is willing to give his life for it. His unwavering resolve completely catches Lord Darius off guard, as he did not expect such a powerful and sincere answer. What interests the Marquis even more is the fact that Colin survived the Viscount's wind edge, using nothing but his basic knowledge of magic. His unbreakable spirit, forged through years of surviving as a gladiator, deeply impresses Darius. In that moment, he begins to see our hero as the one man in his ranks, worthy of being entrusted with his lifelong mission. The weight of that thought moves him so deeply that he falls silent for a while. He is eventually snapped out of it by Cornell, who informs him that they have arrived at their destination. Marquis Darius Mansion is a breathtaking sight. The massive architectural masterpiece stands proudly in the center of a garden that only the wealthiest nobles could own. As he steps out of the carriage, the Lord calmly informs Colin that he is now a free man. Although he no longer belongs to anyone, that freedom does not release him from responsibility. They live in a cruel world where only the strong thrive, and every man must earn his place. Turning around, Darius bluntly tells him that he will not continue to babysit him. From this point forward, it is up to Colin to prove whether he can survive the harsh life of discipline and hard work awaiting him. Our boy remains calm and steady, showing no fear toward whatever challenges lie ahead. Marquis Darius states that he expects great things from him in the future. Formally addressing him as Colin Hall, he confirms our hero's status as his adopted son. With that declaration, Phase 1 of his homecoming is finally complete. In this world, nobles almost never marry beneath their rank. Status must match status, otherwise the bloodline gets tainted, and the family's power weakens over time. The Hall family, in particular, is obsessed with preserving the purity of their lineage. But among them stands one exception, Lord Darius Hall. Unlike the rest, he doesn't buy this noble nonsense, mainly because he was born as an illegitimate child to a maid. From the day he was born, he was treated as inferior. Whispers followed him through every corridor. Yet instead of breaking, he crushed that prejudice with sheer ability. Through merit alone, he rose to the rank of Marquis of the Line Territory. As he walks through the grand halls with Colin, he calmly shares this belief. A man's background means nothing. Strength and competence decide everything. He tells Colin plainly that he can offer him fame, wealth, authority over society, or whatever else he desires. But nothing will be handed over for free. If Colin wants those things, he must prove he has the talent worthy of them. With a proud smile, Darius suggests he pours his heart and soul into every action he takes. Hearing that he can claim whatever he earns, Colin does not hesitate. He boldly asks if he can obtain a noble title as well. The question shakes both the Lord and his butler, who freeze for a moment. Even Darius Hall was not expecting ambition of that level. Then the Marquis bursts into hearty laughter. Instead of taking offense, he finds his directness amusing. With a warm grin, he challenges Colin he is free to try and take his title from him if he wants the title so badly. That answer perfectly matches Colin's understanding of the man. Darius values merit above all else. This belief in merit over blood is exactly what makes him different within the Hall family. It is also what makes him deeply hated. The Nepo baby heirs, who rely only on their status alone, cannot stand that he blocks them from power. Because of this, his greatest enemies are not outsiders, but members of his own household. Right on cue, his eldest son Fried Hall and his second wife Katrina Williams appear with big smiles, happily welcoming him home. The Lord remarks that he never sent word about his return, and laughs that it is impossible to keep secrets from his own family. His wife playfully jokes that news about him happens to spread when he passes through a city. She adds that a little birdie informed her about his small clash with Thrace over some slave boy. Lord Darius Hall coldly stares at her with contempt. In reply, she smiles mischievously, acting like an innocent lady who did nothing wrong. Darius silently surveys the servants attending her, snakes in disguise who report his every move behind his back. Colin stares down the woman as well, Daryu's closest yet also his greatest hidden enemy. In his past life, she was the reason he failed his lifelong mission. After dealing with her husband, he became a victim of her schemes as well. She was the sole heir to her parents' title and vast fortune. That is why she carries the authority and influence of a first wife, even though she is technically the Lord's second. Her ultimate objective is simple, to ensure that her son, Fried Hall, becomes the next head of House Hall. In his previous life, she manipulated him completely. This time, however, he has no intention of letting history repeat itself. With blazing confidence, he steps forward and states that it is a true honor to meet Lady Katrina Hall and Big Brother Fried. Then he loudly and proudly introduces himself as Colin Hall. He vows to devote every last ounce of his strength to making the influence of House Hall stronger. Hearing a commoner use the family name so boldly, Fried Hall is left utterly stunned. Just as he prepares to insult Colin in front of everyone, his mother raises her hand and silences him at once. The cunning lady decides to handle that job personally. She expresses disgust at the thought of a pleb staining her noble family name. Lady Katrina turns to Cornell, asking the butler whether this new servant requires strict re-education in manners and respect. Cornell wisely keeps silent, unwilling to anger either side. To everyone's surprise, our boy lifts the blade of his sword high. He states that the name suits him perfectly, since it was granted by the head of House Hall himself. He presses their buttons, asking whether they intend to oppose a decision made directly by the Lord. With a faintly mocking tone, he adds that they should remember his name well, because one day he will be the one who claims the title of Lord and leaves them far behind. Katrina's eyes narrow in disdain at the peasant daring to spout such empty nonsense. Meanwhile, her son Fried Hall rages so hard he looks like he's going to punch a hole through the wall. For Lord Darius Hall, however, Colin's defiant words are music to his ears. The servants standing at the back begin mumbling among themselves. To them, it is ridiculous for an adopted slave to even think he has a chance at becoming head of the house. To silence the rising whispers, Lady Katrina Hall coughs softly. Within seconds, every servant in the chamber falls into complete silence. She bites her lip in frustration, ordering Colin to know his place and keep his worthless mouth shut in her presence. After that, Her Highness commands her servants to restrain him at once. The butlers draw their concealed swords, and even the maids prepare for a beatdown with their brooms. Before things escalate too far, Lord Darius calls for a short time out. He explains that Colin is telling the truth, and if he can prove his worth, then he can claim the position of Lord. Fried is confused and asks what that would entail, but Lord Darius simply answers with an angry stare. Lady Katrina says she does not object to the Lord's decision, but she explains that the Darius house has many servants, and only the most trusted among them are granted a surname. It is absurd in her eyes to let an outsider like him carry that name. She adds that they cannot accept this so easily. Lady Katrina proposes that they test the boy so he can prove his worth, and if he fails, then according to family tradition he must leave the house. In response, our boy lets her know something like that will not stop him. The noble gets upset and asks if he is backing out at the thought of the challenge. But Colin explains that every servant should be allowed to take the same test, so each of them has a fair chance to earn the surname. While mocking Fried, he adds that this would be a better way to decide the next lord than relying on nepotism and handing the title to someone without skill. Hearing that, Fried feels humiliated for the first time. He slips into denial and wonders how the only son of the house could possibly compete with common servants for the crown. Suddenly, Katrina places a hand on her son's shoulder and reminds him that he is a noble who must remain calm. She tells him he should not fear a few nobodies because, unlike them, he can use magic. She advises him to simply observe for now, and he agrees without another word. Finally, Lord Darius accepts our boy's proposal, and the test will be held after 1 month. It will be open to all applicants in the house. Until that time, Colin will work as a low-ranking servant, and that is perfect for him because he can finally study the magic book in detail. Walking through the corridor, Cornell tells our boy that he truly has a way with his words. He explains that the Lord is always being watched closely by the other nobles because of his unique mindset. He asks our boy to confirm whether he really worked for a noble in the past, since the slave guild reportedly bought him from a remote frontline village. While drawing a knife and placing it against our boy's throat, Cornell asks if it is merely a coincidence that he arrived here just when the Lord is searching for his next successor. Our boy stays calm and questions if Cornell is trying to accuse him of something. He then drops the fact that the slave guild feels no shame when it comes to lies and deception. They blatantly teamed up with a Viscount over the Prophet from a single match. He asks him if he truly believes the guild let him off the hook so easily if he was working for someone. Still suspicious, the butler replies that the merchant described our boy as simply mediocre, but his movements clearly show skill at a much higher level. In the Empire, a ranking system exists for both magic and swordsmanship alike. Most people are only able to reach the intermediate level. Even among them, only a few rare individuals climb any higher. The nobles usually focus only on magic, so when it comes to swordsmanship, they remain inexperienced. However, elite groups like the Divine Guards demand high-level skill in both magic and swordsmanship. After hearing that explanation, Cornell wonders if the merchant gave him false information on purpose so he could quietly get rid of him. Colin responds that if he were truly a mole, then he would aim directly for the position of Lord instead. The butler asks what exactly he means by that statement. Our boy explains that the sole purpose of a mole is to infiltrate and exploit weaknesses, so if he were actually a spy, the position of butler would have been far more convenient. From that role, he could easily obtain the secrets of the Lord without much suspicion. After that, our boy offers him a simple deal. He says he will use his position as a servant to quietly search for enemy spies, and in return he wants Cornell to act as his partner and cooperate with him fully. The butler asks if he understands that by doing this, all the other nobles may turn against him. Colin replies that if the risk is high, then the reward will be just as great. If Lord Darius fails because of his actions, there will be no inheritance left anyway. Hearing that, Cornell is satisfied and slowly puts his knife away. The butler still wonders if this kid truly is ambitious to go so far just to claim a title. Admittedly, he is both strong and sharp-minded. In the end, Cornell feels the deal sounds almost too good to be true, so he suspects Colin is scheming something. Setting those doubts aside for now, he tells our boy to follow him to his new home, the servant quarters. At the quarters, Cornell shows the MC around and tells him to choose a place he likes. He explains that the madam has divided the servants into 3 categories. The highest rank serves the madam, the master, and their son directly, while the middle rank is allowed to live inside the mansion alongside them. The lowest rank is placed in separate quarters and is not even permitted to approach the mansion itself. The butler then briefs him on his duties, which include chopping wood, disposing of waste, and taking care of the horses, with a daily pay of 3 copper coins. Before leaving, he also mentions the strict rules of the household, the most important being absolute obedience to all senior servants. The MC looks over and notices that many of the servants resemble thugs more than workers, and he wonders if he is truly expected to obey people like them. Cornell calmly explains that these rules were personally set by the madam herself. The MC accepts the terms without resistance and greets the other servants, saying he looks forward to working with them. Instead of responding normally, the servants begin mocking him, calling him the future lord of the territory in a sarcastic tone. One of them steps forward and mentions that they have already heard about how the boy picked a fight with the madam and her son. Another smirks and says they will teach him the proper way to greet his seniors. The situation escalates as one of them smashes a glass bottle and uses it as a weapon. He orders the MC to kneel down and slap his own face while repeatedly saying he looks forward to working with them until they are satisfied. The others start mocking him as well, but the MC does not take the humiliation lightly. He grabs the thug's finger, and before the man can react, he is instantly overpowered and manhandled like a rag doll. The other servants stare in complete disbelief as Colin kicks the man away and sends him flying across the area. Before they can even process what happened, the MC calmly declares that he will not hold back and begins slapping the thug while repeating the same line about looking forward to working with him. The other servants lose their temper and rush in with a killing intent, but Colin reacts instantly. He flicks his sword and strikes them with the hilt right into the face, stopping their charge in an instant. One of them staggers back and realizes his comrade has lost a tooth, but before he can even react properly, Colin is already on the move again. He leaps forward and delivers a clean flying kick that sends another thug flying without resistance. The second thug slowly regains consciousness, only to find Colin already standing in front of him with his sword drawn. The MC calmly asks if he is satisfied now. The thug quickly agrees in order to save his life, but the moment Colin turns his back, he tries to attack again with the shattered bottle in his hand, screaming for him to die. In the next instant, the entire scene shifts in an instant. Colin stands still with his sword already in position, completely unfazed, while the thug drops to the ground having lost both his hands. As the man screams in pain and panic, Colin slowly sheaths his sword and turns back to ask if he is satisfied now. Night falls, and the MC estimates that by now he has likely earned Cornell's trust, although he still cannot predict how things will unfold later. With that in mind, he opens the magic book and begins trying to learn magic to strengthen himself. Colin recalls from his previous life that Countess Katrina had replaced all the servants of the Hall family after marrying Darius, placing her own people throughout the estate. As a result, her relationship with Darius had deteriorated further over time, even though it was already incompatible from the beginning. In order to protect himself and keep an eye on the situation, Darius assigns his loyal friend Cornell as his butler. Cornell is the only person with enough authority to not only remove the Countess if needed, but also take part in the selection process of the successor. The MC remembers that in his previous life, Cornell was ruthlessly murdered, and after that, Countess Katrina gained significant influence, allowing her to push her own son toward succession. He reflects that if the butler had survived, things might have turned out differently. Colin then realizes that his current beginner-level magic resistance will not be enough to protect him, so he needs to grow stronger. He starts focusing on learning both defensive and offensive magic. With that thought, he reaches out to the book, and its pages burst outward around him like a violent hurricane. He feels as if the contents of the book are being forced directly into his mind, and in an instant, he is overwhelmed by a pain that leaves him completely paralyzed, like thousands of ants biting through his body at once. The energy surging through him becomes unbearable, as if his blood, bones, and soul are being submerged in molten magma. A dark knight-like figure emerges from the book and calls out Colin's name. In the next moment, it appears behind him, whispering for him to destroy, fall, and submit. The MC struggles under the pressure and begins to wonder if this is truly the price of learning magic. He recalls a colleague from his previous life saying that one only needs to close their eyes and feel the flow of magic to learn it properly. He thinks to himself that it must be easy to be a noble, since they can learn magic as naturally as breathing, and he clearly recognizes the huge gap created by bloodlines. Even so, he forces himself to endure and places his hand on the book, declaring that he will succeed no matter what. But just before he can complete the thought, something suddenly catches his attention and throws him off guard, and the entire space echoes with an eerie sound. The next morning, the servants are already up and moving through their usual routine of washing and preparing for work, when the thugs notice the MC has just woken up. One of them immediately mocks him, pointing out how unusually relaxed he looks for someone who went to sleep after causing trouble with his seniors. The MC casually responds that he was certain he would have been stabbed in his sleep by now, but clearly even that didn't happen. Before they can react, he adds that it likely wouldn't have mattered even if they had tried anything. He stretches, yawning slightly, and remarks that the previous night's training left him exhausted. He decides he will eat first before thinking about work. He then adds almost offhandedly that the night of grinding had paid off and he has unlocked a special type of eternal magic. Before the situation can escalate further, the scene shifts outside the residence where a group of guards is moving through the area, forcing people to clear a path. The servants immediately bow their heads in fear as the entourage approaches, and one of the guards yells for everyone to make way for their one-eyed lieutenant. A servant standing in front is caught off guard while carrying a bucket of water. He fails to step aside in time, and a guard kicks him in the stomach, sending him and the bucket crashing aside. Water spills across the ground and splashes onto the lieutenant's shoes. The lieutenant stops and looks down at the stain. His aide instantly begins shouting at the servant for daring to dirty their leader's footwear. The lieutenant raises a hand, signaling him to stop, and then slowly walks up to the trembling servant. The servant apologizes repeatedly, insisting he wasn't paying attention and begging for mercy. The lieutenant smiles faintly and says it cannot be helped, which briefly makes it sound like he is forgiving him. But before the servant can even breathe in relief, the lieutenant's expression sharpens. He calmly states that eyes which cannot even watch their surroundings properly are unnecessary. In a swift motion, he tears out the servant's eye, leaving him screaming in pain as the lieutenant coldly mirrors his own one-eyed appearance. The other servants glance at the screaming man with a mix of fear and pity, but the aide quickly snaps at them, asking what they are looking at and ordering everyone to get on their knees. At that moment, the MC walks past them without slowing down, almost as if the entire scene has nothing to do with him. His casual stride catches the aide completely off guard, leaving him momentarily unsure whether to react or ignore it. The MC, more focused on his own thoughts, wonders what he should eat for breakfast since servants are not exactly provided proper meals here. The thug who had been injured earlier immediately recognizes him and reports to the lieutenant that this is the same guy who severed his hands the previous day. He also warns that the MC had been muttering to himself all night, which makes him seem unstable. The lieutenant narrows his eyes slightly, forming a conclusion that the boy is likely dangerous in an unpredictable way. He calls out to him. The MC finally stops and looks over without any sign of concern, asking flatly if he wants his hands chopped off as well. The lieutenant licks the blood from his fingers and remarks that they are not like the soft nobles or the countess's people. The other guards step forward and declare a harsh rule of retaliation, stating it is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. They then challenge the MC directly, asking whether he will cut off his own arms or if they should do it for him. The MC remains calm, showing no change in expression, and instead responds with a cold counteroffer. He tells them they can choose between losing their hands or losing their heads. The lieutenant, however, smiles as he says that he will not be the one fighting him. Instead, he brings forward a former slave arena champion and tells our boy that this is the one he will be facing. Colin immediately recognizes the man as a guard reserve and an intermediate-level servant named Daku. He starts sweating heavily because he never expected to run into his bestie in a situation like this. Colin remembers him as his closest friend, someone he could always rely on in his life before regression. They had spent time together doing all sorts of things, including fighting monsters side by side. Now, however, the poor guy stands there as just an intermediate-level servant, clearly having taken a beating. As our boy reaches for his sword, he tries to provoke him by asking if he is really stepping in to fight on behalf of a loser. Daku raises his sword and points it at Colin, replying that he is simply following the rule that every junior must obey their senior. Our boy questions that logic, asking if they are not even allowed to speak up while being treated like this. His words catch the slave boy off guard for a moment. Colin uses that brief opening to snatch the sword from his hand and instantly dashes forward, placing the lieutenant at sword point. The underlings are left stunned by how fast the boy moves, and even Daku stands there in shock, realizing that his sword was taken from him without him even noticing it happen. The lieutenant nearly wets his pants, but somehow manages to keep his composure as he asks Colin if he understands who he is getting involved with. He reminds the boy that Lord Freed personally chose him, and going against him will bring serious consequences. Colin slowly pulls his sword back without saying a single word. The lieutenant straightens his collar now that he feels safe again, and immediately starts acting tough, insisting that our boy is not leaving this place without facing some kind of punishment. The creep then orders his men to teach Daku a lesson, and without hesitation, the servants slash the poor guy across his back, drawing blood. He calls him worthless trash and commands his men to show no mercy at all. The minions mock him as they continue, even driving a blade through his hand while saying that this is his punishment for failing, since he just lost the only chance he had to prove himself. Seeing this, Colin's anger finally snaps, and he instantly cuts down both of those minions, slicing through their necks and killing them on the spot. As he turns his back toward the lieutenant, the ugly leader of the servants notices a brief opening and quickly takes a stance, ready to end the boy's life in a single strike. However, his movement turns out to be clumsy, and before he can even follow through, his sword gets cleanly cut apart. Colin warns him that next time it will not be his weapon that gets sliced, but him instead. Just as he raises his sword to strike again, his attack suddenly gets intercepted by Daku. Daku steps in front of the lieutenant to shield him, standing firm despite everything. He acts like a loyal guard and confronts Colin, telling him to stop adding to his sins by disrespecting his seniors, even though his hand is still bleeding from the stab wound. Since he has no intention of fighting Daku, Colin lets the lieutenant go and asks all the servants to leave the area. As his former friend calmly puts his sword away, Colin questions him, asking why he refuses to fight back when he is clearly the stronger one and could have easily handled those weak opponents. Daku responds with anger, saying that Colin is already as good as dead for defying his senior, and because of that, he has no interest in continuing this conversation with him. After Daku saves the lieutenant, instead of showing any gratitude or acknowledging his effort, the man turns on him and tries to force his head into water. The lieutenant blames him for just standing there and doing nothing, claiming it made him look like a fool in front of everyone. The poor boy apologizes, only to be slammed harshly onto the ground right after. One of the servants then asks the lieutenant if he really plans to let him off so easily. Hearing that, the man lets out a laugh and orders his subordinate to spread a rumor that the boy has declared war on all senior servants. He then commands them to strip him of his position and send him into isolation. Colin once again asks Daku why he keeps enduring all of this without fighting back, but the poor guy can only grit his teeth and stay silent. Later that day, during lunchtime, the senior servants sit together enjoying a lavish meal. Meanwhile, one of the intermediate servants talks excitedly with her colleague about a dream where she was getting promoted, unable to hide her excitement even at the thought of it. Meanwhile, the low-ranked servants are given nothing more than a bowl of soup instead of a proper meal, yet none of them are seen complaining about it. Just then, our boy arrives and walks up to the counter to get something for himself. He looks around and questions why everyone is staring at him like that. The cook spills his soup and starts laughing, saying that those who do not work do not deserve to eat. Colin, however, takes it lightly and instead walks straight toward the section meant for the senior servants. He casually climbs up to their dining area, making the senior slaves furious as he pushes a few of them aside without caring. He reaches the proper meal section, where a full buffet is laid out, and casually picks up a croissant along with a piece of chicken to eat. Butler Cornell steps in and reminds him that this area is reserved only for high-ranking servants. The senior servants immediately demand that the butler punish this outcast properly. However, instead of taking action against him, the head butler quickly comes up with a smart excuse to handle the situation. He explains that the boy has only just arrived and that it is normal for newcomers to make mistakes. He then asks Colin to come along with him, while all the senior servants look disappointed. As they walk, Cornell reminds him about the rule of absolute obedience towards seniors and questions why he is not following it. Colin, however, argues back, saying that the Marquis himself stated that rewards are based on skill rather than rank. He adds that he believes he has enough ability to earn a proper meal, which is why he chose to take it himself. The butler then offers to cover his living expenses, but in return, he wants our boy to find a spy who is hiding somewhere within the estate. Just then, a signal is given to begin the hunt, and it appears that the Marquis is heading toward the hunting grounds. Apparently, there have been some unusual activities in the deep dark forest near the area, so the Lord plans to check it out while hunting along the way. As Colin finishes his last bite, a slight smirk appears on his face at the thought of that dark forest, already planning to head there himself. As the scene shifts, our boy has already reached the forest and is now hunting a red-eyed black deer. He fires multiple arrows at the target and successfully takes it down. After ending its life, he walks over to the corpse and begins searching for the monster core. As he holds the purplish core in his hand, he recalls how these are often treated as luxury items and are usually processed into necklaces and other ornaments. However, based on what he learned from the Forbidden Magic book, he realizes that he can use it to create potions that help recover mana and strengthen his body. From his understanding, the properties of a core change depending on the rank and type of the monster it comes from. Since the deer he just defeated was a low-rank creature, the core he obtained is of the lowest grade. The story then shifts back to earlier, when Colin was walking with Cornell. Our boy had requested permission to enter the hunting grounds. Normally, only royalty are allowed to go there, but due to the current abnormal situation, only divine guards or a few authorized personnel are permitted to enter the area. Colin insists on going anyway, and suggests that he could join along with the divine guards, which somehow ends up working in his favor. As he continues harvesting the core from the monster, Daku suddenly arrives, clearly angry, and scolds him for acting on his own. He reminds him that only nobles and at least middle-class servants are allowed to hunt here, and if he gets caught, he will face serious consequences. Colin acts like it does not bother him at all, and casually takes Daku's sword without asking. He drives the blade into the dead monster and claims that the prey now belongs to Daku, and since Daku is a middle-class servant, there should be no problem anymore. Daku immediately loses his temper at this ridiculous reasoning and regrets ever getting involved with a low-class servant who keeps making things more difficult for him. When he questions why Cornell allowed Colin to come along, our boy takes out the head butler's dagger and shows it to him, saying that he has been assigned a mission, and this dagger is the proof. He further explains that both of them are expected to assist with the investigation, and while doing so, they are also supposed to bring back some proper food. Daku kneels beside the monster's corpse and glances back at our boy, wondering how he ended up this unlucky to be paired with him. He lets out a sigh, and the moment he looks down again, he realizes that the meat is already gone. It turns out that the outcast has already started roasting the meat in no time and even calls Daku over to eat with him. Daku immediately panics and hurriedly asks what he thinks he is doing. Colin shows no sign of guilt, which earns him a scolding as Daku reminds him that the meat is supposed to be handed over to the Lord and their seniors. Our hero argues that there is more than enough meat and even urges him to sit down and eat together. At first, the poor servant tries to resist, but when Colin reminds him that he only gets to eat once every 3 days, and that he might not even get food later if he is punished, Daku finally gives in. Unable to resist the sight and smell of the cooked meat being held close to him, he quickly starts eating like a starving man. While he is eating, Colin asks him again why he is so obsessed with blindly following orders from his seniors when he is clearly stronger than them. The servant replies that strength has nothing to do with it, and goes on to repeat the belief that nobles were chosen to act as God's agents, and were granted divine power. He adds that if he continues to work hard and remain obedient, he might be reborn as a noble one day and receive that same divine blessing. He explains how he had put in serious effort just to rise to the position of a middle-class servant, all so he could become someone his sister, living far away, could be proud of. He tells Colin to stay out of his matters and stop interfering in his life. He continues by saying that they are already fortunate enough to be servants, and that they should simply follow the duties assigned to them without question. Colin then asks him if all of this is just because he wants the ability to use a bit of magic. Hearing that, the servant challenges him, telling him to try and learn even a single spell if he can. In response, Colin turns toward him and asks what he would do if he actually taught him how to use magic. That statement completely shocks the guy, and he quickly asks if our boy can really use magic. Before our protagonist answers, the two are startled by a sudden painful scream coming from a nearby area. They immediately realize the scream came from the knights surveying the deep dark forest. One of them is savagely bitten in the shoulder by a massive magic beast. Their leader orders his men to maintain their formation and keep a steady level head in the face of sudden danger. However, he learns firsthand that his words alone are not enough. Not when his men are getting mauled by the beasts left and right without mercy. One of the magic beasts pounces on him, forcing him to lock his sword and shield against its snapping fangs. Never in his long career did he think a pack of mere wild dogs would give him this much real trouble. He puts more strength into his blade and slices right through the beast's jaws, knocking its lifeless body away from him. All of a sudden, his subordinate urgently warns him that there are 3 more coming straight at him from behind. Realizing he is completely screwed, the leader silently stands there, awaiting his grim fate. Right on time, 3 arrows suddenly lodge deep in the 3 beasts' jugulars, leaving them heavily injured and stumbling. The heroes who came to save the day reveal themselves, calmly asking if they are safe for now. Our boy scans the beasts closely and remembers they are named Azure Flames, after their unique blazing mane and tail. The meat and bones of this beast are so precious that you can live for days comfortably after hunting one of them. His real goal, however, is the monster's powerful glowing core, so he takes careful aim, ready to make sure he hunts down every last one tonight. Colin leaps high into the air and makes himself look like easy prey for the magic beasts below. Seeing that reckless move, the knight's leader views him as a fool walking straight into the lion's maw. But the situation is the exact opposite here. Our hero is the true predator, who sees the dogs that need to gang up for hunting as weak and desperate packlings. He lodges an arrow cleanly in 3 heads and makes a smooth landing on the ground. Thinking this is a clear opening, one of the magic beasts dares to ambush him swiftly from behind. Like time has completely slowed down for him, our boy bends back to dodge it with calm precision, before he kicks it hard in the gut and sends it back to hell where it came from. Watching him kick away a massive beast like it is a little puppy, all of the knights are just as amazed as they are shocked. Cold-blooded as always, Colin calmly shoots it in the chest one last time to completely seal the deal. Soon after that, more magic beasts come prowling from the dark forest. That turns out to be a fatal mistake, because he unleashes a rain of arrows on them, eliminating them all on the spot. The leader observes his overwhelming combat skills firsthand in disbelief. He can barely believe his own eyes that a single warrior has the ability to take down more magic beasts than his entire squad combined. Suddenly, our boy senses a powerful and extremely dangerous energy approaching him. He jumps out of the way just in time as a massive pillar of blazing azure flames violently crashes down where he stood. It came from a beast who looks a little different and far larger from the others. He realizes what is coming next when he sees bright blue sparks cooking inside its mouth. As it opens its massive jaw, 3 blazing blue balls come hurling straight at him. Moving through them like a seasoned veteran hunter, he returns the favor with 3 sharp arrows of his own. To end the poor puppy's suffering quickly, he smashes the heel of his foot hard into its skull. Talk about brutal. The sheer force of his kick drives the beast's head deep underground like it is some startled ostrich. At that exact moment, an arrow suddenly whizzes past his face, reminding him he is still surrounded by people who are not exactly his allies. Turns out, however, it was aimed at a beast he was completely unaware of quietly creeping up from behind him. Daku quickly alerts him that he should not let his guard down in the middle of a chaotic fight. My guy flashes him a quick thumbs up in appreciation. Meanwhile, Daku sighs in annoyance like a classic tsundere. Impressed, Captain Glenn sincerely wishes to know which lord such incredibly skilled warriors are actually working for. Before Colin screws up another introduction again, Daku smoothly introduces himself and his friend as a backup divine guard and a low-rank servant who were sent by Marquis Darius's butler Cornell as support. Their strange partnership of our dynamic duo completely stuns Glenn. After hearing that they were saved by a reserve guard and a low-ranking servant, the royal guards react with clear disgust. The lady questions what Cornell was even thinking when he sent the old woman's servants to assist them. At the same time, another guard mutters that it is embarrassing to be rescued by low-ranking amateurs. Hearing that comment, innocent Daku still doesn't realize who exactly they are calling an old woman. Meanwhile, Colin uses the break to collect the magic cores from the fallen monsters. At last, he finds a mid-rank core, which he can later use to craft a potion by following the instructions written in the magic book. A large knight suddenly shouts at him and demands to know who gave him permission to touch the monsters. His captain Glenn steps in and says they should stay focused on the mission assigned by Lord Darius and simply let Colin deal with the dead bodies. Our boy asks the big man who he is calling a brat, reminding him that he was the one who saved them. He adds that only a brick-headed idiot would speak so rudely to the person who just helped them. Angered by that response, the man moves as if to charge at him. However, both the girl and Captain Glenn quickly tell him to calm down. They call him Marvin, and the moment our boy hears that name, old memories surface from his past life. Back then, aside from Cornell, Glenn, Marvin, and Sarah, were the only people Lord Darius truly trusted. In his previous life, those 3 died during a mission in the Gloomwood Deep Forest. After that loss, Lord Darius gradually lost his power. Our hero never expected that he would be the one to change their fate this time. Because of that memory, he silently decides he will not let anything happen to them again. Seeing the tension rise, Daku quickly apologizes on behalf of his partner and explains that he is new here and unfamiliar with the rules. He asks them not to take his sharp words too seriously. Sarah says that the wrinkly hag's mutt should just shut up. Again, Daku is seriously confused because he doesn't really understand her weirdly specific insult. Glenn asks Colin if he is the newbie who arrogantly declared that he will become the next lord. He admits that he is strong, but he will definitely regret in the future if he follows ideals that are much bigger than his position. Before taking their leave, Captain Glenn thanks our boy for saving them and excuses himself because they have a mission to take care of. Suddenly, they hear a loud roar which startles everyone. Out of nowhere, a pack of azure flames along with the Mega Evolution version appear in front of them. Seeing that giant magic beast, all three freeze and Sarah shouts that it's an Azure King. The Azure King, with its giant size and bright blue burning flame, leaves them stunned. He lets out a mighty roar so loud that they all start trembling in fear. Then he uses his claws to unleash an attack, but they are all too slow to react, or even lift a finger. Captain Glenn's life flashes before his eyes, and he closes them, thinking his squad is going to die. When they open them again, they see something that they cannot believe. A low-ranking servant, who should have no combat skills at all, blocked the Azure King's attack. Captain Glenn asks him who he really is. Being the aura farmer he is, Colin replies that he is the hero who saved them for the second time in one day. As simple attacks have no effect on the Azure King, our boy steps in and uses his special move, Mountain Crusher, on the giant wolf. However, the attack is too shallow and fails to leave any real damage on the hard hide of the elite mob. Immediately after that, the wolf launches a counterattack. He tries to block it, but he cannot fully absorb the impact, so his sword breaks, and he is sent flying back. Following this hit, he understands that he cannot defeat this monster in his current condition. A normal sword like his does almost no damage to it. Seeing that, the three royal guards quickly move in to cover him, and Sarah asks our hero if he is okay. Captain Glenn tells everyone that the Azure King is a high-level monster that has already killed many elite soldiers before. The Azure King then orders its underlings to surround the party and attack them from all sides. At this point, Marvin panics about what they should do. These side mobs are already hard to deal with, and now the king is here as well. Our boy calmly says they should not focus on the smaller ones, because they have no real intelligence and only act like puppets for the king. They only need to deal with the king, and the side mobs will fall apart on their own. Captain Glenn finds it hard to believe what he has just heard. On the other hand, Daku says the monster has killed many elite guards, so there is a pretty poor chance they can defeat it. He asks his partner how he plans to win with a broken sword. Confident as usual, Colin simply replies that they should at least give it a try, making Daku think he's got a screw loose. Even so, Captain Glenn agrees with the plan and says they can only survive if they fight as a unit. Meanwhile, Sarah points out that it is not easy to reach the king while its underlings are protecting it. In response, our boy assures her that there's nothing to worry about. An opening will soon appear for them. At that moment, the Azure King suddenly lets out a roar, and the puppets rush in to attack. Colin calmly tells everyone to stay composed and let the enemies come closer. Marvin immediately yells at him to question who gave him the right to issue orders. Surprisingly, Captain Glenn steps in and says it is not the time to argue among themselves. He orders his men to follow their hero's lead. Before moving out, Colin tells Daku to trust in him. If he wants to become a big brother his sister can be proud of. Right then, Captain Glenn shouts that the enemy is already upon them. Even then, he repeats that they have to wait and let them close the distance. Only when the enemies are within arm's length does he finally give the signal to attack. First, he directs Captain Glenn to use his holy protection to blind them. Next, he tells Marvin to push them back using Heaven Shaker. Lastly, he instructs Sarah to carve a path using her phantom blade. Following his commands, everyone executes their roles, and a clear path is opened through the enemy line. While the captain fights, he contemplates how someone can be this familiar with so many different sword arts and weapon styles. Once the opening is created, our boy immediately orders Daku to follow him. Sarah motivates him in her own way, telling the little doggy to not mess this up. Poor Daku is still confused when she keeps calling her that. Taking advantage of the opening, Colin and Daku quickly rush toward the king. On the way, Daku asks him what he is planning to do. He explains that everyone fears the Azure King. If they attack it head-on without intimidation, the noble creature will be too shaken to react. Daku still does not fully understand his logic and asks how he plans to attack the king with a broken sword once they reach it. In response, our boy asks him if he can think of any other way to attack someone without relying on a sword. Daku recalls the moment when he was told that Colin can use magic. He starts wondering if the rascal will actually pull it off and defeat the king. In the very next instant, Colin manifests a mana line from his hands, which activates the flow of magic throughout his body at full capacity. With his mana pushed to its limit, he unleashes a powerful move known as Ice Lotus without holding back. The Azure King gets bombarded by countless ice shards, and Daku can hardly believe what he sees unfold before him. The monster withstands the assault, so Daku leaps forward and lands on its head before driving his sword straight into the creature's skull with full force. Our hero reinforces the strike with his eternal magic, and in the next moment the monster collapses as a beam of light rises from where it once stood. As soon as it falls, all the smaller azure wolves scatter into the forest in panic. while Daku struggles to process what just happened. He stares in disbelief as the battlefield grows silent after such an intense clash. The royal guards rush forward and ask if everyone is alright after the fight comes to an end. Captain Glenn observes that the Azure Flame Wolves have fled because their leader has been defeated. Meanwhile, Marvin questions how they even managed to take down something that massive in the first place without backup. Colin replies that the plan only succeeded because of their support, and he admits that no one can predict how the outcome would have turned out without their assistance. Sarah examines one of the ice shards closely and begins to feel suspicious about our hero's true abilities. Marvin comments that the boy reminds him of the captain during his younger days, which leaves Daku confused about who this former captain might be. Marvin explains that Marquis Darius Hall once led them, and Sarah adds that they all served under him in the Lionheart Brigade. She continues by explaining that after the brigade disbanded, the surviving members eventually became part of the Royal Guards. She then sarcastically remarks that the old lady's dog does not even know such basic information, which finally pushes Daku over the edge. He confronts her directly for calling him the old lady's dog, and declares that his name is Daku with full pride. He demands that she engrave his name into her memory and fires back by calling her an old hag without hesitation. That comment clearly strikes a nerve, and Sarah falls silent for a moment while Marvin awkwardly explains that she refers to the Countess as the old lady. Daku looks surprised at that revelation, but before he can process it further, Sarah suddenly appears right in front of him and demands to know why he thinks she looks old. She argues that she still stands in her prime youthful beauty no matter what anyone claims, but Daku refuses to back down and insists that she has already passed her prime. He calls her out for denying reality, and she immediately locks him into a chokehold without mercy. Our hero briefly recalls a moment from his past life when Daku and the others would joke around in the same chaotic way, but the memory fades quickly as the sound of approaching horse hooves interrupts his thoughts. The young Master Freed arrives at the scene, and everyone reacts with surprise as they notice his presence. All of them immediately bow in respect as he states that he rushed over from the camp the moment he heard the disturbance nearby. He looks around at the fallen Azure Flame Wolves and asks what exactly took place here. Captain Glenn explains that they had ventured deeper into the Gloomwood Forest for an investigation when the pack suddenly attacked them without warning. He adds that they would not have survived the encounter if it were not for Colin and Daku stepping in at the right moment. Freed turns his attention toward our hero, who remains completely focused on collecting monster cores as if nothing else matters. He wonders why someone like him is even present at the scene in the first place. Captain Glenn speaks up and mentions that the two of them show remarkable potential, then requests permission to bring them back to the camp and report their achievements to the head of the house. Freed immediately recalls that Colin has already challenged him in the race for succession, and he understands that news of this victory will place him at a serious disadvantage. As that thought settles in, he glances toward Daku and quietly begins to form an idea of his own. He walks up to Daku and says that he had been wondering why he had not seen him around lately, which makes the tension rise instantly. He questions why Daku has been spending time with someone like Colin, and implies that it makes no sense at all. He continues by stating that a low-ranking servant entering the hunting grounds counts as a serious violation, and asks if Daku wanted to taste spoils that were clearly forbidden to him. Daku stays silent as Freed calls him a worthless man, and adds that his sister Erika would feel disappointed if she learned that he had already forgotten the lessons taught to him before. Colin steps in and says that he still stands above a pampered brat who cannot function without his mother's support. Then he greets Freed with sarcasm and calls him a failure. Sarah lets out a quiet laugh, while Captain Glenn tells her to stay in line and not escalate the situation further. Freed grows angry at the insult, but Colin continues and explains that people do not bow because Freed is impressive. They do it because his mother is the Countess. The entire crowd falls into shock as Colin adds that it must feel great to command others just because of powerful parents backing him. Freed attempts to intimidate him and claims that he can have him killed without effort. Colin agrees in a calm tone, but says that the only way Freed can do that is by running to his mother and asking her to deal with a servant who annoys him. Freed loses control and orders his men to restrain him at once, and chains appear as assassins bind Colin according to the young lord's command. One of the assassins places a blade against Colin's throat, and everyone watches as the situation turns dangerously tense. The royal guards recognize the assassins as the Blades of the Empire, a group of elite infiltrators used by the Williams family. Sarah remarks that even nobles fear them because of their ruthless methods and unmatched skill, and she questions why the Countess trusts them with her son's protection. Before things spiral further, Captain Glenn steps forward and asks Freed to let the matter go since the two servants came to assist in the investigation under the Lord's direct orders. Freed clenches his teeth and asks if Glenn intends to oppose him as well, but Colin interrupts and tells the captain not to worry about him. He asks him to report the investigation results to the head of the family instead. Sarah quickly understands that Colin allows them to escape because they cannot afford to take sides, so stepping away remains the only option. Glenn hesitates, then gives in and withdraws with the others despite his frustration. Freed looks back at Colin and asks if he now understands how helpless he truly is when his life rests in the young lord's hands. Colin tells him to kill him if that is his intention, but Fried says that he has a better idea and slowly draws his sword. He calls out to Daku and says that every action carries consequences before he throws the weapon in front of him. He tells Daku that he can redeem himself if he picks up the sword and kills the servant, which leaves Daku completely speechless. Fried then promises that he will let Daku walk free if he follows through with the command. The story then shifts back to Colin's life before regression. Right 1 month after the demons had dropped down to Earth, he is being beaten up by mutant monsters that look like a mix of goblins and ogres. The monster lord has already captured him and mocks him for being a pathetic savior. The demon lord offers him a sword and tells him he will trade the humans he has captured if Colin kills his friend Daku, who is also captured along with him. Daku already looks at his limit and can barely hold himself together. The demon lord sits there enjoying the scene, satisfied that he has forced humanity's so-called hero to kill his own friend with his own hands. With no choice left, Colin plays along and picks up the sword. He walks toward Daku, who then begins to speak and confesses his story. He says that the day his father died was also his sister Erika's birthday. Soon after that, their mother died from an unknown illness, and both of them, now orphaned, were captured and turned into slaves. He continues that Marquis Darius eventually found them and bought them, but their luck did not fully save them as he was still forced to be separated from his sister, who was sent to the Williams family estate under the order of Darius's second wife. Daku then explains that since the demon race has not yet reached that estate, he asks Colin as his final wish to take care of his sister, as he believes she will be safe there. He tells him that she was always picky with her food, and finally he requests Colin to tell his sister that her brother was a mighty knight, so she would be happy knowing he fought for her until the very end. Colin apologizes to his friend as he hears his final wish. The story then shifts back to the present, where both friends are now standing in opposite roles. This time Colin is the one tied in chains while Daku is the one being forced to end his life. When Fried notices that Daku is hesitating, he questions him, asking why he is still not following his orders properly. Daku then takes a stance for Colin and argues with the Lord's son that they are not supposed to kill someone who has just saved them from the brink of death. Fried tries to play dirty by bringing up Erika again, saying how she would feel when she learns that her brother abandoned her for the sake of some random stranger. He continues provoking him by adding more claims about his sister. Fried mentions that he recently heard from the Williams family butler that she has been cutting down on her meals just to buy a sword as a gift for her brother, and because of that she even collapsed from hunger a week ago. This statement immediately frightens Daku and he quickly falls to his knees, begging the young lord to save his sister. Fried, having successfully manipulated him, tells him to go and kill Colin in exchange for making that happen. Colin then starts laughing like a maniac upon hearing this. When Fried asks why he is laughing, Colin mocks him for being a coward, even lower than a dog, and provokes him by saying he could never kill him. Instead, he proposes that the Lord allow him and Daku to fight to the death, saying it would make things more entertaining. Fried becomes slightly anxious as he cannot understand what Colin is planning. He wonders if Colin is afraid of the Empire's blades, and decides to see what happens by accepting the proposal and letting him go. Colin then warms up as he stands in front of his best friend, ready to fight. Seeing his sword pointed at him, Daku wonders if Colin is serious and hesitates for a moment. But Fried once again brings up his sister to force him into action. At this point, Colin has already started his attack and moves in toward Daku with full force. Daku is caught off guard and gets slammed backward. The MC quickly recovers and comes in for another attack, but this time his strike is finally intercepted by Daku, who repeatedly questions the guy about why he is doing all of this and forcing him to fight back. The MC replies with an apology and then insists that he does not want to be the one who ends up dead. This finally pushes Daku into an attack stance, and he forces the MC to increase distance between them by jumping backwards. The MC then warns his opponent that he will finish him in just 3 moves. This attitude finally gets on Daku's nerves, and he hesitantly claims that he does not even need 3 moves and will instead finish him in 3 seconds. The duel grows more intense as the two dash toward each other, but just before their swords can clash, the MC whispers that he would never abandon his comrades. This triggers a memory from Daku's past and makes him hesitate for a moment. Daku understands that this duel is nothing but a distraction and decides to play along with his friend to create a commotion. This disturbance creates a clean opening which the MC uses to leap forward and target Fried Hall. Fried, however, intercepts the sword at the last moment using his thunder magic. Seeing him fight back, the MC mocks him for finally showing some courage and resisting. When Mommy's boy hears this mockery, he becomes angry and tells the MC not to underestimate him, as he is more than capable of changing his own diapers. Just as the MC is pushed back, the Empire blades prepare to attack him, but they are stopped by Fried as he shouts at them to stay back. Fried has now become fully provoked and claims that he will be the one to finish the MC once and for all, and therefore wants no interference. He gathers lightning in his hand and gets ready to attack, which makes the MC slightly tense as his system detects a strong magic source. To get an idea of what he is up against, Colin analyzes Fried's stats carefully. The guy has 0 magic resistance, and his lightning magic is mid at best. Yet the system still warns Colin he cannot properly endure it at his level. Seeing that, the reckless daredevil grins wide with interest. He would rather test for himself if the information is actually correct. Summoning frozen ice in his palms, he directly counters Freed's raging purple lightning head-on without any hesitation. The elements violently crash into each other, ripping through everything in their way. When a thick cloud of dust forms between them, Freed wonders if his eyes are playing tricks on him. The lowly plebeian should not be able to use magic at all. Their first flashy exchange ends in a draw, or so he confidently thinks. Shards of ice suddenly appear from behind the dusty cover, though he easily zaps them into harmless water vapor. Confused and slightly unsettled, he racks his brain over where the ice could possibly be coming from. At that moment, our boy mocks him, casually asking where all that gusto about his amazing magic suddenly went. With a sharp glare that pierces right through Freed, he calls the Nepo baby what he hates most: a failure. Everyone's jaws slowly drop as they watch a lowborn survive the direct onslaught of a noble's magic. Daku questions if his own eyes fool him. Meanwhile, the young master sweats buckets. A mere plebeian cast ice magic strong enough to overpower his own attack. He deludes himself into thinking that it must be a cheap trick. Summoning his absolute strongest thunder spell, the noble loudly declares it is complete nonsense to believe a mere lowborn can wield real magic. Our hero quickly encases himself in a faintly blue aura to defend against the incoming powerful bolts. But he suddenly receives an untimely warning that his magic reserves have completely run out. His defensive spell immediately fails. Mana exhaustion hits him hard, and he barely stands upright while using his sword as a crutch. It slowly dawns on him that he is surrounded with absolutely nowhere left to escape, so he grits his teeth and bears the full brunt of Freed's raging purple thunder head-on. The noble does not hold back at all and attacks him with full intent to erase his irritating existence for good. As his skin scorches under the blistering heat, Colin bitterly regrets that he might pathetically lose to the red-headed witch a second time. He flat-out refuses to let this second chance at life twist into the same miserable fate, forcefully casting magic despite having absolutely no mana left. The magic book system flashes a grim warning that casting magic without mana will cause him to go berserk. Colin, however, does not care in the slightest. He would rather lose his sanity than die drowning in regrets. The color of his eyes slowly shifts. Mysterious blue and black flames suddenly engulf half of his body. Within seconds, half of his body starts to resemble the demons he slayed in his past life. Even the magic book is unable to judge what his true stats are, showing unknown in every category. Feeling the strange and overwhelming power surge violently through his body, he does not even know what to think. A burning headache suddenly makes it hard to focus or even breathe. Pushing through the pain, the observant warrior notices Freed does not have much stamina left either. He clears all of the noble's lightning with a single clean magic-imbued slash. Freed looks on in pure horror, never having seen magic this terrifying in his life. He freezes as our boy suddenly jumps high into the open air. When he crushes his sword down into the ground, massive jagged shards of ice violently erupt from below, aimed directly at Freed's position. The noble remains confident his intermediate-level thunder magic is more than enough to zap away the incoming ice. However, he figures out far too late it was all just a calculated distraction for his opponent to slip silently behind him. Like a seasoned assassin, Colin approaches from behind while Freed is still busy blocking his barrage of sharp ice shards. Freed's pupils shrink in fear, and his life flashes before his eyes. In a desperate last-ditch effort, he barely dodges death by sacrificing his favorite horse as a meat shield. He unsteadily lands on his feet that have never touched grass. Meanwhile, our hero continues to radiate the powerful blue mana that is seemingly infinite. Noticing that his breathing is heavily labored, the noble recognizes his enemy is right on the brink of total collapse from exhaustion. He casts Chidori Blade, gathering crackling lightning magic in the palm of his hand. Our boy shows absolutely no fear as he cuts through the crackling bolts effortlessly, declaring it is finally time to finish their reckless scuffle. When his blade stops inches from the young master's pale face, Freed realizes Mommy will not be able to save him this time. He jumps back and shuts his eyes tight, thinking he had a pretty good run. Right then, a radiant golden magic circle suddenly saves him from getting skewered like a sweet Turkish delight. It deflects Colin's force right back at him, knocking him a short distance away across the ground. Both boys look completely stunned when they see the one who saved Freed and firmly tells them to stop at once. Lord Darius lets the boys know they are not in some crude gladiator arena. This is a noble hunting ground, so they should cease their completely senseless battle immediately. Atop his mighty armored steed, he calmly suggests they duel it out properly and officially after they return to the grand house of Hal. Freed looks at his father with just as much gratitude as his hate for the man. Meanwhile, our hero quietly looks on with his glowing demon-like eyes. As the last of his unstable magic is fully drained, he falls to his knees in total exhaustion and slowly returns to normal. Recognizing the faint but unusual aura of magic coming off him, the Lord is genuinely amazed and concerned. Colin recognizes the threat is gone for now, so he finally lets go, blacking out cold on the spot. A few days pass before he fully recovers consciousness. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself lying in a soft bed inside the Hall mansion. Suddenly, he feels the same burning sensation of the demonic-looking magic that took over his body. He quickly jolts upright in bed to check himself, and luckily enough, he has returned to normal, completely unchanged in appearance. While he quietly appreciates that he did not become some horned demon, a familiar gentle voice nearby says it is glad to see he is finally awake. My guy turns right and sees a zombie-looking Daku. Bro looks like he was the one in a coma for 5 whole days. The poor guy quickly brings him up to speed, saying that he blacked out and made everyone seriously worry. Sarah apparently slapped him repeatedly to bring him back, and Captain Glenn had to physically carry him all the way to the mansion. Sarah worried so much that she held the doctors at blade point, saying they would share the same coffin as him if they failed to save his life. He has a hard time believing any of that, but there is no denying he feels better than ever right now. To get some fresh air, he invites Daku to accompany him for breakfast on the way to thank Sarah properly. Having said that, he cannot forget Daku sticking to the sacred bro code for him. He thanks his friend with a cheeky little grin. Daku pretends like it was nothing, but he's pleasantly surprised that Colin has the words thank you in his vocabulary. Later in town, all of the other servants start shaking when they see our hero pass through. He gives them a suspicious look, wondering if he somehow has something weird on his face. He overhears a few maids whispering rumors about his intense fight with Freed. Silently getting close to the ladies and jumping scaring them, he politely urges them to share exactly what they have been hearing about him. Terrified, the ladies immediately make a run for it without hesitation. Daku is confused why the women are acting like they just saw a ghost. Taking a closer look at his friend's pale complexion, Sherlock concludes they must be terrified of his lifeless zombie look. Daku gets annoyed, because he is the reason he stayed awake 4 nights straight. Not a big fan of Daku's sudden attitude, he loudly yells that he never asked him to become his personal nurse. Just then, Lieutenant Hairloss rolls up with his crew and openly mocks the potential future Lord of House Hall. Irritated by his untimely interruption, the boys shout in sync at the idiot that this is not the time. They somehow force him to apologize for absolutely no reason. After loading for a solid second of confusion, the lieutenant furiously declares that he came here today to take revenge for the humiliation he suffered a few days ago. Irritated by the old man's endless yapping, our boy walks right up to him as the man makes lame excuses for why he lost last time. This lieutenant unironically believes things will be completely different now, and that he will finally teach this disrespectful kid a lesson he will never forget. The man snaps his fingers and loudly shouts the name of his squad. A few awkward seconds pass while he stands there, fully expecting our boy to get flattened on the spot. When he notices his men just standing around like confused ducklings, the lieutenant frowns and asks if they suddenly went deaf. To him, that snap is an obvious signal for them to attack the target. His troops hesitate before reminding Big Boss Hairloss that their target is a monster who fought neck and neck with Master Freed. Daku lets out a short laugh, not surprised at their reaction after seeing Colin fight up close. The lieutenant's forehead twitches as a vein pops from pure embarrassment. Since his men clearly lack courage, he decides to step in personally and salvage what little dignity he has left. That is when his eyes land on his favorite pawn standing in a very convenient position. He immediately grabs the guy by the collar and yanks him forward, calling him a traitorous dog who betrayed his master. Declaring it a serious offense, the lieutenant takes it upon himself to deliver judgment. The ugly bastard even looks excited at the thought of beating his defenseless subordinate. But Daku calmly does something he never expected and blocks the weak punch with one hand. The lieutenant's arm trembles, completely stuck in Daku's firm grip. Daku states clearly that this piece of trash does not have the authority to punish him. Then he casually swats Lieutenant Hairloss aside like he's a clingy ex who refuses to move on. The man nearly short-circuits from shock, unable to process when the obedient little puppy suddenly grew the nerve to defy him. Hearing the loud argument, Captain Glenn arrives and demands to know why everyone is making noise so early in the morning. Marvin and Sarah step in right after him, both clearly annoyed that their breakfast got interrupted. The lieutenant lets out a smug laugh, convinced that the royal guard will punish the troublemakers far worse than he ever could. The greasy bootlicker immediately bows low before the guards, singing their praises. He quickly reports that he was simply carrying out his noble duty to drill proper manners into the disrespectful brats Jojo posing behind him. My guy salutes Captain Glenn like all's good in the hood. The lieutenant expresses his disbelief, offended by how relaxed he is while addressing someone of higher rank. Suddenly, Marvin steps in and smacks the lieutenant aside, saying he is just glad to see Colin finally woke up. Watching this unfold, the lieutenant's face goes blue with pure confusion. Right now, he is witnessing the most elite guards in the territory casually joking around with the so-called insolent brat like they are best buds. For a brief moment, he convinces himself this is just a fever dream. With no options left, he argues that it is unacceptable for elite guards to socialize with a low-ranking servant. Sarah throws an arm over his stiff shoulder and bluntly tells him laws set by old hag Katrina don't mean jack to her. She also adds that the sound of his whiny voice seriously annoys her, so he should keep his mouth shut unless he wants to start wearing a second eye patch. With that gentle warning delivered, our hero joins the royal guards for breakfast. He turns around with a mischievous smirk and politely apologizes to the boss for embarrassing him yet again. The scene then shifts to them in a nearby bar where they celebrate his recovery. Colin admits he originally wanted to thank them for saving him once before, and now he apparently owes them another favor on top of that. Sarah shrugs and says she was happy to help because she cannot stand Potato Head anyway. Captain Glenn also reminds him that he did them a huge service back in the forest. Curious, Daku asks Sarah if she has known the lieutenant for a long time. The lady immediately gets heated just thinking about the smooth-brained bastard. Wanting to steer things away from that topic, Captain Glenn changes the conversation. He's been meaning to discuss for a while. There are only 3 elite knights remaining in their ranks, and he would like the 2 to join. Colin stays composed, but his friend nearly loses his mind at the idea that a substitute like him can become member of the Royal Guard. Glenn emphasizes that this is a massive opportunity, because it would grant them all the privileges reserved for high-level servants. Our protagonist refuses the offer with zero hesitation, stating he has no interest in playing knight. He already has his sights set on something far greater, and he does not plan to settle for anything less than his ambition. And his words are enough to stun the whole drinking party. One of them suggests that he stop pursuing the foolish endeavor of becoming the Lord of Line, that just because he defeated the young master doesn't mean he should be cocky. The chick chimes in, drunk as ever, correcting this dude by stating that whatever Colin used, it just had to be magic. Pointing at him abruptly, she figures that he must have used some kind of magic to defeat the Azure King as well. Our boy doesn't respond, letting things play out, while the other dude questions how in the world could a former slave even manage to lay his fingers on magic. The old geezer butts in to pressure the kid into giving an explanation. Colin reflects that he always knew these guys would soon catch up to his secrets. While they're eyeing him down right now, he's just happy for already having prepared a cover story like he's some kind of serial gaslighter on the block. All eyes are set on him. The woman is moments away from accusing him of something, while Colin is afraid of their reaction. And the epic resolution? The girl's best guess is that this guy is some kind of former noble, scaring him for no reason. Bro is still baffled while she's chiming up to him, applauding her own ability to uncover his secret identity. She's so drunk she even assumes his backstory being some kind of illegitimate child who ended up becoming enslaved, and that his mission is to reclaim the mansion he lost, regaining his power. It's quite the reach, even for her, making Bro's friend wonder how the hell this crazy bitch got that. As for our boy, he just laughs. All he has to do is simply agree with her, which he does, to help him create a new story. They all think he's stating the truth, while Colin even begins to whine, expressing how he's just a former noble who lost his way and ended in slavery. His passionate speech invokes so much emotion that Bro's doubters are suddenly pitying him, while he vows to take back everything that he lost. Despite the rest of them being fooled, the homeboy over here thinks that there's no way such a simple lie could fool Captain Glenn too. Except Bro's expectations are shattered the next moment, because the old geezer buys the story too, agreeing to keep it all a secret. Colin's all chill with the captain, who simply wants him to keep his powers a secret in front of the madam or the young master. Aside from that, he also shares that the Marquise is interested in meeting with Colin, so the scene ends with our guy leaving to go see him. Glenn watches from afar, reflecting on the so-called Ale City Colin mentioned in his cover story. On their way, the homeboy is still baffled how smoothly that story worked in their favor, but even more, he's confused why Colin decided to choose Ale City of all places. Our boy responds by highlighting how the city is supposed to be a melting pot, far from the territory, and it's even difficult to investigate. This whole former noble thing actually works out in his own favor to manipulate people later on. That aside, Dude Bro wants to ask about something else too, gesturing his hand into a hook. He wants to know if Colin is aware of some three-legged crow, or if that's also some technique he invented on the fly to mislead people. You see, back then when he saved Daku's life, Colin slashed the fat monster's head clean off, emphasizing that he should go and share that message to his sister by himself. After saying so, he continued to annihilate the rest of the monsters, but before his blade could reach the boss, the sword stopped under the influence of this heavy, vaporizing magic. Colin froze in shock, while the monster taunted him for even entertaining the idea of defeating him. Then came Daku himself to the rescue, who found the perfect opening to lunge forth, blindsiding the monster before he could even retaliate. In the end, both of them managed to slaughter the beast with a decisive double attack, and then they ripped him into pieces to serve on a sushi plate. Daku had some serious beef with our boy right afterwards too, calling him a piece of shit for treating his will like it was cringe or something. Anyway, they couldn't argue for long because these two guys were quickly jumped by more fat ugly orc demons or whatever the hell these things are. Daku cut one down, roaring his complaints against Colin for pulling a ridiculous stunt that could have killed the hostage he was trying to save in question. Our boy told him that cutting the hostage down wouldn't have helped him either, since the monsters wouldn't just let him go. Daku then shared his complaint about why Colin couldn't just send him a signal or something before his grand act, but our boy mocked him for suggesting that exposing his strategy is a good idea. Their playful taunting continued, The two guys berated each other while the others just watched in confusion. By the end of it, the only two people at war were the ones who were supposed to be on the same side. Daku then made his special sign of the three-legged crow, which he probably thinks is super duper cool or something. Apparently he learned this from a guy called Rowan. It's supposed to gesture cooperation between two allies. Our boy found difficulty trying to create the sign, but also taunted Daku for trying to get captured one more time like an idiot. At present, Colin reveals that he actually knew about the sign already thanks to an old friend he lost, a guy he considered his best friend actually. Hearing this, Daku is a little astonished, wondering if there was someone truly like that back at the company. A knock on the door came with both of them being summoned before the Marquise at last. The ruler is in high spirits and asks Colin how he felt. Our boy responds with glee, stating that he's all chill now. The Marquis also greets Daku, who offers maximum respect to his master. Then comes the subject of interest, because the Marquis clearly called them for a reason, which happens to be the matter regarding the incident at the hunting grounds. Yes, that same incident over which they were fighting that day, it was a terrible idea to use the grounds without permission too. The Marquis personally comes up to them, sharing how he has a connection with Glenn for a while now. Together, they've already faced death several times, grazing past it, coming this far. That's why even in his position, the Marquis fears losing them, and he respects these two young men greatly for saving his friends. Daku adds that with shared regret of not being able to save more of their comrades in the end, a failure on their part. However, the Marquis absolves them of this blame, stating that they had no fault, and that it's actually his mistake for not being able to anticipate the monster raid sooner. Colin and his homeboy just stare at each other in confusion, while the Marquis adds that they probably heard about the situation of the Royal Knights from Captain Glenn himself. Since they're standing in front of him now, he wants Colin to answer once more, and like clockwork, this man shoots the offer down with confidence. Switching his target to Daku next, the Marquis asks the same question, startling the young man because he's given a personal offer to become the Royal Guard. Fidgeting in fear and panic, Bro says that he's so inexperienced that even a position of a guard is not fitting for him, let alone the capable position of a Royal Guard. To help him out here, Colin assures the young man that he should speak from his feelings instead. Focusing on that, the guy clumps up his emotions and shouts with passion his desire to become a Royal Guard. The decision is resoundingly clear, but the Marquis is interested in offering a reward to Colin too of his own choice. Given that kind of freedom, he makes a serious remark, a desire to free Erica, Daku's sister, the one who is currently a servant of the Williams family. His choice for a reward stuns Daku himself, who did not see the unexpected turn of events. Colin remains adamant on his request, pitching how both siblings were together until they came to the Hall family, and unfortunately her body was deemed far too weak, except Daku has only wanted her to remain by his side. The Marquis asks once more if that is truly his desire. Colin relents that he shares a brotherly bond with homeboy over here, and that he is without a doubt his best friend. That's why he just doesn't want to leave him when he's clearly in trouble. The guy's face is flat. He never even expected such high praise, while our boy insists that Daku's sister be reunited with him. That kind of bond, the brotherly bond between comrades, reminds the Marquis of his own allies. Unfortunately, since this matter concerns the Williams family, it's not going to be easy or quick, and at once, the Marquis asks that Daku step out of the room for now. The guy is ready to leave, but he's left pondering about Colin's existence once more. Now that our boy is left alone with the main man himself, the Marquis brings up another topic, reminding him of the day the boy challenged Thrace in a fight. Back then, the Marquis quickly realized that he was not an ordinary slave, and it stunned him all the more that Colin survived a magical strike, before going on to win the fight harmless. What surprised him the most of all was how he managed to show a power that he displayed several times before. Also, the Marquis seems to know about the cover-up story he made against Captain Glenn too, speaking of his intentions to reclaim nobility. Interestingly, Colin mutters the Marquis by name, before showing off a hint of his magical powers, assuring the man that he's not a grand person. Instead, he's just an ordinary guy who has some affinity with magic. Now, since he's the Marquis himself, a Grandmaster Archmage would only view him as an insolent, insignificant being. However, the same Grandmaster Archmage is currently baffled how a normal person wields the ability to manipulate magic. Once more, it makes him want to question the kind of person this guy truly is. Colin emphasizes that the man standing before him is someone who loves his people the most, the greatest Marquis of all. The same man respects power above one's bloodline. Colin is just happy to receive his acknowledgement, and his only ideal is to carry on working for the Marquis so that he can eliminate the concept of bloodline supremacy altogether. In simple words, the man wants to reign in and become a powerful great lord just like him, with the eventual and daring ambition of surpassing even the likes of him. Colin admits that the Marquis saved his life twice. That's why he wants to show his proper strength in the selection exam. After that, the ruler himself can decide how to use him as a weapon for his goals. The idea is entertaining, but it actually makes the Marquis cackle out loud uncontrollably. Bro's out here impressed and actually expects great things from Colin, confirming his leave. Before he's off, he asks for one last thing, inquiring the young man's opinion on Rowan. Colin feigns ignorance, as if he doesn't know the name at all, so the Marquis simply tells him to leave without explaining further. Watching him go, Darius Hall is confused why he thought of something like that. He summons his butler Cornell, who was casually aura farming hiding in the shadows. The same steward is curious if the boy is ordinary or a genius. From the way he judged Colin, it seems that he doesn't know about Rowan, which also means that the kid is not from Ale City like he told them. It's a lie, so the butler is not very trusting of him and believes it could be some kind of scheme, because they've had such an incident in the past. And well, it seems like the Marcus's own wife appears to have backstabbed him in the past. That aside, the butler hands him a note, sharing that he received information from Spirit Cat. Darius is intrigued and wonders the kind of information they got him. In the next scene, we have our boy back at home looking at the shiny stuff he's copped, consisting of materials, coins, and potions. It's all thanks to Colin trading his spoils of war for efficient supplies, and with the stuff he's copped this time, his own strength will skyrocket. At the same time, the name Rowan bothers him a lot, making him question who this guy even is. The only time he heard that name is when Daku said it back in his past life, but apart from that, nothing else seems to be known. Then, the way the Marquis said it made it seem like Colin was supposed to know the guy or something. Regardless, he chucks the little bead into his tube, hoping to ask Daku later about the situation. Next, he stirs the whole thing into a potion before chugging it down his throat. After consuming the liquid, the first thing Colin does is chant open the magic book. The special artifact scatters heaps of pages in front of him, and he continues to consume more vials in the process, discarding another into the pile. Experimenting a new change, Colin focuses his energy and chants absorb, immediately forcing his muscles to tense up from the pressure. The system confirms the absorption of the mana, increasing his mana capacity by 1 point. And damn, this system really is the opposite of the one in solo leveling at this point. Colin reflects that mixing some flame monster cores with Jade Sovereign Grass can raise his mana capacity. At least that's the information he found in the book. But even a potion like this could only get him 3 points at most, while some don't even offer a single one. Regardless, Colin fears losing control after running out of mana again. That's why he intends to improve magic resistance first. At the same time, he can't help but admit how disgusting the whole thing tastes. It's making him want to puke already, and consuming them one by one is going to take him way too long. Bro fears that he'll die of diarrhea before improving, making him wonder if there's some easier way to handle things. Staring at his mana capacity, he suddenly reads notification from the system, detecting a powerful monster core. Basically, this core can be turned into a magic artifact to aid him. It's an interesting idea, so he takes the blue core and investigates further to play with the approach. He taps on the system screen to configure the setting, and meditating allows him to cast the avatar of the monster in a golden aura. Like the magic book instructed him, he channels his might into the mana core. Forming a picture of the artifact in his mind, he wonders what he should craft. He decides quickly and squeezes the crystal ball in his hand, before materializing the magic artifact with the blue core. The crafting procedure is pretty extraordinary, and it ends with the golden shimmers fading away. The system confirms the successful creation of the artifact, which is a bracelet around his left arm. Lo and behold, it's the Azure bracelet with the special effect of granting the user wild intuition. There's also a blessing that helps boost his mana capacity by 1 point for wearing it. Still, to test its effects, my guy chugs another bottle, only to amplify his capacity by 2 points instead. In other words, even the ordinary portions that gave him 1 point can now be converted to 2 points just because of one bracelet. It's an incredible object, but what he's really curious about is the main ability called Wild Intuition. Just then, his senses sharpen as he senses something on the other side of the door. Colin can sense 2 individuals. They're both maids, but Bro is so startled he physically shouts in confusion. It seems as if he suddenly found his way to X-ray vision, or more accurately put, life force vision. The same happens when he glances at the guards, viewing the world in a different color gradient. Next, he checks on the Marquis and Katrina too. Their flames are an indication of their mana. All of that aside, Colin hears a faint, distinct voice, echoing that it is restlessly starving.